Hello, I'm Jamie and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the 5th episode of Series 17 of Taskmaster, which officially marks halfway through the season. Unfortunately, I wasn't a massive fan of this episode, and I do think it's the weakest episode we've had so far, which is a shame, but I'm going to explain exactly why I think that. First of all, I'm going to do a quick run through of what actually the episode entailed before I go into what I didn't think really worked. So yeah, let's get straight into it. As usual, we started with the prize task, which was the most extraordinary picture, and this part of the episode I did actually quite like. I thought it was quite a good start to the episode, especially starting off with Sophie's dancing vole picture, which was a callback to the first episode of the series. So it was really nice to see her dancing vole. I thought it was quite a nice reference to the previous tasks. And again, it was quite good. It was surprisingly good. And I think Greg summed it up as it's not bad, but it's not extraordinary either. But I do think it is a pretty good entry for the prize task. Nick's one was personally my favourite, and I do love the fact that he got high points for it because it was just really, really funny. And this was the sign outside the church with randomly big letters. And this was really, really funny. The story behind it, the way they read it out was just hilarious. So yeah, I thought that one was a really, really fun one. And it is extraordinary how they've designed that sign. So I think it fits the category. John's one was really good as well, which was a picture of Paul McCaffrey in a Nando's. And as he said, sums up the experience of being a travelling comedian. And yeah, it's such an awful photo. I felt so bad for him, but it is absolutely hilarious. And again, it deserves the 5 points. I definitely agree with the scoring in this prize task, especially on the next one, which is Joanne's one, and she did get 1 point. And I do think this wasn't the best prize really at all. First of all, it wasn't even a good prize itself. It was just a balloon. And the experimental video behind it I don't think worked very well either. Again, it was just a balloon deflating a bit or blowing up a bit. I can't remember which way around she did it. But yeah, I did not think this was a great attempt. I kind of get where she was going with it, I guess. I thought the inflation joke from the audience member was the best part of this task. So yeah, unfortunately, definitely deserves 1 point. Steve's as well, I wasn't a massive fan of. It's nothing particularly extraordinary to me. It's something that's kind of been done a lot of times before, like face swap things. It was funny, seeing Greg and Alex with their face swapped. It is that weird, uncanny valley feeling to it. But yeah, nothing particularly extraordinary. And I will say actually that nobody's picture I would say is extraordinary. I would say they're all just funny, I guess, and all got an interesting backstory, but they're mainly just gone for the humour value, which completely makes sense since they're comedians. But yeah, this one again I wasn't particularly impressed by, but I did like Steve's kind of talking about it and giving them characters' names, which was again another reference to was it the first prize task where they had to do something that rhymes with Greg Davies. Yes, it was the first prize task of the series, and because he named the swapped around picture of Greg Glug Gravies, so linking it to the first prize task, which was a nice callback again. The first proper task was to bear the most impressive load, or be the most impressive load bearer, which was a very odd task, I think. I think it was restrictive enough with the waving and the thumbs ups, making them put stuff on their body rather than just hold things, but it was also not loose enough for them to be creative with it. I didn't really feel even though people were creative, but I just think this task felt a bit limited, which is why I wasn't a massive fan of it. Again, there was funny moments from it, it being a funnily worded task, Alex interrupting them at the start and John kind of outsmarting him and running away. All of that was really good. And there was a bit of room for creativity with the fact that you could go for carrying the most weight, or going for just carrying the most impressive thing. Sophie and Joanne both had decent ideas, with Joanne having putting things on pegs to be able to carry more stuff, and Sophie using the skirt to carry things. But I don't think either of them utilised it fully and didn't really carry that much weight or anything particularly impressive. The final images are really funny, which I think redeemed this task a little bit, but I just don't think either of them really carried too much stuff, nothing really cool there or impressive. Steve's I did like finding all of the dress-up clothes. I thought that was really funny, and I loved his childlike excitement for finding all those clothes and all the things he thought to do with it. And I liked his here's the thing that he did. I thought it looked really impressive when he first walked through the door. Like, it was a lot more impressive than I was expecting. So his was definitely one of my favourites on this one. It was more creative and more out there, but it did kind of fall flat at the end, where it did kind of fall down. The final picture didn't look that impressive, which, to be fair, they didn't tell the contestants that was how it was going to be judged, like on the final image. But yes, like I do like Steve's attempt, but I do think 3 points is a bit unfair, to be honest. I think he should have maybe got 4 or 5. To me, it was on par with John's. John's I did really like as well. I thought there was lots of things that he played to, you know, playing to Greg's ego and like sucking up to Greg, but also doing something like visually impressive as well. All those pictures of Greg and the big thing, like the big like cardboard cutout on top. I thought it was as visually impressive to me as Steve's initially was. Like I said, it did fall at the end. But yeah, this one I really liked, and I understand why Greg gave Nick 5 points. I don't know. I love Nick, and I think he deserves some points, but I do think 5 points is a bit much. Like, it was a very funny attempt, the way he immediately just went to trying to balance a chair on his chin and eventually settled for the umbrella thing. But like, it did look impressive in the one split second that it was on his chin. But like, yeah, I just feel like it's unfair to kind of judge it just by that 1 second that it was on, and like this final picture of everybody, unless I did miss something and it did say that, but I don't remember at least viewing it. So maybe it said something in the task itself, but as a viewer I didn't really clock that it had to be when they were holding their thumb up and waving. But I probably would have given him 4 because it was quite impressive, but given maybe Steve and John 5 maybe. I don't know. I did think it was quite difficult to judge, and again, I wasn't the biggest fan of this one. I just thought it was just not that exciting, and for something that could have been quite cool and contestants could have been a bit more creative with, or things, yeah, I just thought it fell a bit flat in my opinion. And unfortunately it was followed by another one that I wasn't a big fan of, which was to take the most dramatic photo in mid-air, and they had 5 photos that they could take. When they said 5 photos, I was thinking it'd be like you could see all 5 and like it'd be like a story. Was what I thought they were initially going with at the start, but it is just the 1 photo. Again, there are some funny moments with this. I liked everybody jumping in the studio. It was a nice kind of like all of them doing something together, which is the first we've really seen of that. And Nick's attempt was hilarious. It was completely insane, and like I agreed that he shouldn't have got any points for it. But to him rolling down the hill in the tube, knocking over cans was very funny, and I thought it was a nice bit of insanity to add into this task because, yeah, it needed something a bit more. Sophie, again, I think did an excellent job in adding some humour and some, like, yeah, just more insanity to this task. Jumping on a trampoline, pouring milk onto Alex with a pigeon mask on. Like, it was just so surreal and ridiculous that I think it really did add something to this task that it needed, because to me, again, it just kind of felt like this was missing something. It was maybe it's because it was 2 creative tasks in a row, and the results of both creative tasks weren't that impressive to me. But I don't know, I just thought, again, it was a slightly weaker task. Steve's attempt I did like. I thought he perhaps something more creative with it. The photo of him skydiving, they're nice. The added element of it being like a skydiving gone wrong photo with like the rope that's torn, so he doesn't have a parachute. Like, there's some added elements to that kind of add to the story, which I enjoyed, and I thought the photo was quite good. John's and Joanne's are kind of in a similar ballpark for me. They went for both like kind of classic options of just jumping and trying to catch that photo, which is probably something what I would have done, to be honest. Joanne, with her being the story of like being a jilted bride with like a knife through her skull and like falling over, and John being shot out of a cannon into fire. Both of them were good, they were classic, but again, I didn't really get anything out of the task, apart from a few laughs, which we always like, but it just felt a bit flat, and especially because they had the ad break right in between like the final pictures, and I just think that was a bit unnecessary and kind of dragged on this task longer than it really needed. Again, I did agree with the scoring on this one, and there were some funny elements to it as well. The next task was to tie yourself to the bed, and this was my favourite task. I did really enjoy this one, so this is like the redeeming part of this episode for me. There were lots of fun things with this, like if you pull down the terrible tie then you're disqualified, had to lie down horizontally, all things like that. I thought this was quite good. I think there were enough restrictions for it to be difficult, but enough freedom where they could be creative and come up with like loopholes to try and like figure out how to do it better. So yes, I thought everybody had a decent attempt at this, apart from Nick, but he just kind of screwed himself over unnecessarily. Yeah, I like the difficulty of this, and I think, like I said, there were things that made it easier, like there being grabbing tools that didn't make it impossible for the contestants. I'm not 100% sure how I feel about the terrible tie thing, because I know the point of it, it's like you kind of have to gamble with how many ties you take down, but also it could be the first tie you take down and you're just unlucky. And I feel like having that element, it can feel a bit like a letdown. Like if, like for Steve, if the only one being disqualified, it was just pure unluckiness that was the tie that fell on him. I thought the fact that he managed to break the machine and just all the ties falling down was really, really funny. And I think this was definitely had the most humour to it, and was a bit that I was like properly like chuckling through the whole thing. All the ties falling down on Steve, Nick getting stuck upside down. Just, there were so many fun parts to this one. So yes, I thought this one was really good. Sophie as well did absolutely excellent in this, because she's having her like moments of genius. So I really want her to win an episode. I thought she would win this one. But I thought it was a stroke of genius to realise that she didn't need to stay in the lab, and then that she could leave at any point as long as she remained horizontally. So getting the rope I thought was a really, really good move, and also limited the chance of her pulling down the terrible tie. That was amazing work from Sophie. And I just loved how she kind of knew there'd be a trick, and she just spent a good amount of time thinking about it and trying to work out what the trick would be. And I think maybe she should go with that approach a few more times, because this is the second main time, I would say now, where she has had the best idea and she's pulled off successfully. So I definitely think there's more options for her in the series to do this as well. But yeah, poor Nick, he had a really good idea. Like he was thinking in the right space as Sophie, being like, I don't need to stay in the lab, I can leave the lab. But then getting himself into a terrible situation where he couldn't get back up. Just absolutely hilarious. All the things he said, like, oh, I don't think I've done this one right, and the little like, oh no, like it was just all really, really funny. So this one definitely redeems the episode for me. I thought, yeah, so many funny moments with this. Joanne and John again going with more like classic approaches and just kind of doing the task as intended, and both did quite well on it, so it worked out for them. But yeah, amazing task in my opinion. Then for the studio task, we had the task where they had to choose what item they wanted to park and park it in the bays that they had to say. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 rounds. Quite fun. I like the elimination rounds that they seem to be going with in this series quite a lot. And I like the little versions of them that they had. There was some tension in this task, and like some actual like, ooh, like who's it going to be? Like, you know, actual tension, which I really enjoyed. And yeah, I thought it was a very, very good studio task, and one that, again, it would have been fun to see live if you were in the studio audience. And this means that John wins the 3rd episode in a row, which is just incredible. He is really becoming the one to beat. And yeah, I think 3 in a row, has that been done before? Probably. I don't know. Someone will have to put it in the comments, but very, very impressive. So there are a few reasons why I didn't like this episode. And I have seen some people talk about how there hasn't been too much like studio banter, like the cast or this season is missing something. And I didn't really have that same feeling until this episode. This episode definitely to me felt like there was a lack of studio environment and lack of connection between the contestants. The only kind of jokes between the contestants were either like Greg and Alex at the individual contestants, or Greg and Alex within each other. There isn't really any like major competitiveness between the contestants, no like really nice friendships or anything. And I think coming from series 16, which was hilarious from start to finish, lots of crazy contestants, lots of really funny studio moments, like every single episode there was something hilarious happening in the studio which didn't have anything to do with the tasks. And coming from that and such the high energy, fun environment and just silliness and loving relationships between all the contestants and between Greg and Alex as well, to this where it's kind of lacking that contestant relationships between each other. It does feel like it is lacking something. And I think as well there has been a shift in the relationship with Greg and Alex. Last season and a few seasons they kind of shifted towards a more like friendship, like nicer relationship between the two, where Greg was just kind of being like, oh, this man's ridiculous and things like that. It was a lot nicer relationship rather than the master-servant relationship. Where in this series so far, it seems like they've kind of gone with a Greg being frustrated by Alex, and he just seems a bit like exasperated by it all, like with like Alex's jokes and things, which is funny. It's funny, but like I think that dual kind of shift from really silly contestants to kind of calm contestants and really nice, like almost like friendship between Greg and Alex to kind of a frustration between them combined, it does leave like the viewers kind of needing something else. Like it needs a bit more like energy, I think, and just more silliness. I think just more silliness within the studio, because it is just missing that. Another reason why this episode in particular I wasn't a massive fan of was because we had 2 creative tasks in a row and there was not too much variety in the like finished attempts. Essentially on both tasks, the thing that they were judging were just photos of the contestants. We had 5 photos for Greg to score from the first one, where they had to like bear the most impressive load, and 5 photos for Greg to judge in the like actual photo challenge. So I think having them follow each other, I just think it felt a bit underwhelming, and especially for, I can't remember which one there was the montage to, maybe the second task where they just showed that all the contestants doing things and then just having here are the pictures that they did. It just kind of is missing something. Like I don't think either task was bad, but I think if they should have been like separated. I think it would have been a massive thing just to have the tie task in the middle rather than at the end, or to have those 2 creative, quite similar tasks in different episodes. I think would have worked a lot better. Having them follow one after the other, just, yeah, it felt a bit underwhelming. But yeah, those are my thoughts on this episode. This is the first one that I haven't particularly enjoyed in this series, which there's always going to be weaker episodes, and it hasn't impacted my overall view of the show whatsoever, or of the contestants in this one. But I think because of this episode, I have seen more people say that they're not enjoying this season as much as previous ones, and I think I am really enjoying it overall. But I do think it has had the big problem of following on from an amazing series. I think Series 16 is one of my favourite ones, possibly my favourite. So it has had a challenge following that one. And so I think for a lot of people, having that really amazing, exciting, silly season, and then this one which is a bit more chill and a bit more calmer, perhaps isn't working for some people. But I think the contestants individually are all very entertaining. But yeah, it definitely is lacking more like contestant banter between things, and it doesn't have that studio environment yet, which I was hoping it was going to get. But we're halfway through the series, so I just don't think we're going to get that in this season, unfortunately. I thought we would have quite a lot of competitiveness, particularly from like between Steve, John and Joanne. And in terms of points, they are competitive, but there isn't really anything between any of them. You've got no like arguing scores why their attempt should be better. You've got no defending each other from Greg. They're just all there individually, and I think that is impacting the energy of the studio. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Are you enjoying this series? Are you not? We're at the halfway point, so we've pretty much established, I think, the studio environment and how each contestant is kind of working in the tasks. But overall, I am enjoying the season. But yeah, this episode was just a bit weaker for me. If you enjoyed this video, then please leave a like. It really helps the channel, and subscribe if you want to see more videos to Taskmaster. I'll have some more out for you soon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!